Should I start us off today?
You can if you want.
All right. Ready?
Yep.
Hi, my name blip blip blip. One moment, please. Hi, my name is Michelle Tansey,
I'm Stephen Tansey.
and you're talking with the Tansies.
All right, Michelle. What are we talking about this week?
Money.
Money. What about money?
Anything and everything about money. But mostly how we approach money as both individuals and as a couple. I think, talking about how we budget, manage, etc. I think we should start with how we structure our actual bank accounts.
Okay.
Because I think the way that we do it, and we actually both did this individually and now together, but I don't think it's common to have like multiple checking accounts and savings accounts in the way we do.
Yeah. So I guess first up, we'll discuss how we organize our money. This is largely going to be focused on since we've been dating, since this is about our relationship, but we can certainly touch upon things that happened before our relationship. So just a kind of brief overview before we started dating, I would use multiple bank accounts to organize my money. I know in years past, or I've heard from like older folks, they would have like an envelope system. So they would put like rent money in one envelope and grocery monies in another envelope, and that's how they kept track of what money was for what. I do basically the same thing, but with bank accounts. So I have a bank account that is my weekly spending for groceries and stuff. I have another bank account that is for my car repairs or gas or anything like that. I have another bank account that is just for saving. So that's how I end up organizing my money separately.
I do a similar thing. Before we started dating, I had basically a bank account where like all of my bills came out of. So, things that were consistently going to come out monthly. So, rent, car insurance, electricity, etc. And then I had a bank account where the like non-fixed stuff came out of. So things like gas, food, and then my like free spending money, my fun money. Now, the way I have it arranged is I actually have 5 separate bank accounts. So I have one that's for like just fun money, one that is for my bills, and these are my personal bank accounts, not counting the ones I have with you. And then I have one where like groceries, if I want to buy coffee, food out, etc. Then I have one that's for my car, so that's where I put my gas money and the money for my lease. And then I also have a 5th one, which I use like when I use a credit card. The idea is, of course, that I should already ideally have the money. And so I use that as actually like a holding area for money that I've already spent on my credit card so that I don't spend it twice. Does that make sense?
No, for sure. That's a good way to go about it.
Yeah. And then I also have a savings account where I theoretically try to save up for like those kind of random like yearly expenses that come up. I'm not very good at keeping track of those, but things like every 2 years I have to renew my nursing license. My Costco membership needs to be renewed. That's $130 a year. So I try to keep like a certain amount of money in there just to be able to kind of pay those like random things that come up.
For sure, for sure.
And just general savings as well, but
So since we've been dating, we've largely, and now married, we've largely kept our finances separate. We still both have our individual accounts where we organize our money however we want. The biggest difference is we now also have a joint checking account and a joint savings account. The joint checking account we use for monthly reoccurring expenses that we both would chip in for, so rent or electricity or internet or anything that we both use that has a reoccurring monthly charge, we use the joint checking for. And then the joint savings is ideally for trips or big things that come up. So, for example, last year we used the joint savings account to save up for our wedding, as well as going to one of my friends' weddings. So that's how we saved money over the year for those things. And this year it's very similar, where the savings account we're just throwing extra money into for another wedding we have to go to. So that's what we use jointly now. I know that's odd for some folks, or especially when I talk to my older coworkers, or heck, even some of my younger coworkers. They mention, "Oh, me and my wife, or me and my spouse, we combine all our finances. We do it all together." I don't. Michelle, do you want to talk about maybe why you feel like we don't do that, or I can keep rambling about it?
Yeah. I mean, I think, particularly as a woman, it's very, very important to have financial independence from your partner. That is how a lot of people get trapped in bad situations, because they don't like have their own means. So that's kind of one reason. I also think it just works for us. Like, that's just a system that works. I think if combining your finances with your partner is what works for you, that's also fine. We also, like, we make a very similar amount of money. So it's not like one person is like hoarding all the wealth, you know? We might do things a little bit differently if one of us made way more money than the other, but or honestly we might not. I don't know. Did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so my general thoughts on keeping things separate is money is an area where it's real easy, I think, to cause problems in a relationship. And when you have combined finances, it's harder to have the differentiation of what's your money versus what's my money. So, for example, if all of our money was pooled, there might be things Michelle buys or there might be things I buy that the other person doesn't view as necessary or as worth it. And if all your money's combined, that can lead to feelings of like, well, I don't want to help pay towards that. Like, I don't think we should be spending our money on that. And of course, when you're in a relationship with someone, especially when you get to the point of being married or living together, their financial health does impact you. So I don't want to come off and say of you shouldn't have any say in what your partner does with money, because if your partner is doing horribly financially, that will impact you as well. So I think it's still worth, like, Michelle and I have conversations when we want to make big purchases of like, oh, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? Do you think it's worth it? And that's how we check in with each other. But, for example, Michelle buys a lot of coffee, and she's been doing her best to buy less coffee out and make it more from home, but she buys a lot of coffee out. And if I saw that on our debit card very often, I might start having the feeling of like, why is she spending all this money on coffee? We could save so much money if she just didn't buy this coffee. We could really use the money. On the flip side, I have a lot of hobbies in things like tech or Magic the Gathering, and I'm sure on the flip side, if Michelle saw some of the expenses for these, she'd be like, why are we spending money on this? We could save so much money if you just didn't buy X, Y, or Z. And yeah, and so to me, just keeping it separate means I know what money I have to spend, and so if I spend it, as long as I'm not going overboard with it, and as long as my monthly bills are getting paid, I don't really think it matters too much what I spend the rest of my money on, as long as I'm not going into debt or gambling it away or stuff like that. And I feel the same way towards Michelle, where, as long as the monthly bills are being paid, I don't really care that much what Michelle spends her money on. Again, with the asterisk of as long as it's not leading to debt and as long as we're getting by and, all this stuff. So, yeah, to me, like you mentioned, it just works. And I just think having joint finances can just lead to a lot of potential problems. I know too, talking with some friends and talking it over with Michelle, if we ever went down to a one person income household, I think it's really important for the person who's not working to basically be given an allowance of some sort of here's some money you can spend in whatever way you want. Because, yeah, again, I think it's really hard when one person gets to decide what money is being spent and that's sort of it. Or, and again, I think Michelle's point is very valid too, where if you want to get out of a situation, it's good not to have all your money tied together. That can really complicate things.
Yeah. It's nice too, one thing that I really like, I think it's kind of, I guess, fun to me is we put a little bit extra in the joint account monthly that we can use for things like date nights, and if we want to go out to breakfast or whatever, get food together. It's kind of fun to be like, oh, I'll get it this time, but then it's just our money. Yeah, and we also we just recently, you added me as an authorized user to one of your credit cards as well.
Yeah, but that's just because I can't get you your own card under my name. It's a joint credit card for those monthly or yearly expenses. Let me back up. I like using credit cards for things that are reoccurring. That way I don't have to worry about what day of the month or what time of year do they actually get taken out. So I've been doing this since I've started paying my own bills for things like phone coverage, phone bill, or yeah, basically any monthly or yearly expense I put on a credit card. Because then when I was younger, what would happen is something would be due the 13th of the month and I got paid the 16th of the month and I didn't have enough money in the meantime, and it would just be a lot of stress. Where if it's just on a credit card, I just need the money by the end of the month, and if I have the money by the end of the month, great, I pay it off. It's no problem. And so that's kind of continued as I've grown up, where things like car insurance or, yeah, again, other expenses like that, I just put on the credit card because then it's getting paid no matter what, and then I can move money around as needed, or I don't need to make sure it's in a specific account. I just need to make sure the credit card's paid off in that month. And so once we got married, Michelle got added as an authorized user for the credit card, because there's sometimes now with joint expenses, again, like car insurance, where I think it just makes sense to put it on a credit card and it's a joint expense. So having a card that's jointly ours made sense to me.
Yeah. It's also nice to, credit cards are, they're a really good tool if they can be, if you're someone who can use them responsibly. And we we both know what it's like to be in credit card debt. It's very unpleasant. But there's things often with credit cards like cash back, or like travel points, things like that. It's also a more secure way. It's a lot easier to dispute a charge if someone gets a hold of your credit card. It's much easier to fight that with a credit card company than it is with your like debit card. So there's definitely really they're definitely good tools, and I think using them in that way is an example of a responsible way to use it. I know that I use my credit card mostly for gas, because I get like, I think with my Costco card I get like 4% cash back on gas, and so I try to use it for that and then pay it right off. Because using your credit cards and paying them off monthly is a way to keep your credit score good. And I guess too, maybe we should make the caveat that we're not experts by any stretch
Yeah.
of the imagination, and you shouldn't necessarily take our advice. This is just what we do and what works for us.
Yeah, exactly. This is how we've managed to structure it.
Yeah, you should definitely talk to someone about. You should research credit cards before you get one. Don't. I used it irresponsibly. Stephen, he definitely didn't use his cards irresponsibly in the same way that I did. But yeah, I don't know. Should we go into debt a little into our debt a little bit? Should we talk about that?
We can go into debts if you want.
Yeah. So when we started dating, you were in, dare I say, considerable credit card debt. I actually accumulated most of the debt in the time that we were dating. Do you want to go into a little bit about your debt and kind of why it happened?
Yeah, so I had gotten into credit card debt mostly from just living expenses. While I was in college, I had to use the credit card a pretty decent amount just to get by. And then when I moved to Vermont originally, I was dating someone else, or I was engaged to someone else. And the plan had been once they graduated college, they were about a semester behind me. They would move to Vermont with me, and we would, split expenses because we'd be living together. Once I moved to Vermont, they made it known that they weren't sure if they were going to move to Vermont or not. And we ultimately ended up breaking up, so then they really weren't moving to Vermont. And this left me in a pickle where I had moved to Vermont and I wasn't making enough to cover living expenses. But in my head, I was like, well, I just have to make it the next 6 months basically, and then I'll be splitting bills with someone and the relief will come. And then that didn't happen. And so, I mean, even by the time we started dating, I think I was either already working a second job or about to work a second job. And so I was trying my best to make everything back or make enough money to survive and also pay down the credit card debt. But by that point, the credit card debt was already, I think, about 14 grand. Again, just mostly from I wasn't making enough money and so used the credit card a lot for just living expenses.
So yeah, so for me, my credit card debt was not really living expenses. I was lucky enough to make enough money to cover all my living expenses. But I didn't really have a lot of like wiggle room for fun money. And so there was a lot of like, oh, I'll just put this on the credit card for now because I'll make it back. Like I make enough money that I'll just be able to pay this off. And that sort of just spiraled until I think the largest amount of debt I was ever in was like 5 or 6. Which in the grand scheme of things is honestly not like a lot of debt, but it still of course didn't feel good to be in that debt. Growing up, my parents would always say like, "Oh, we're so poor, we don't have money, like we have no money, we have to really like, cut back." But then there never was any actual cutting back. There was no not like doing something that we wanted to do because of money. I never saw that. And so and what it was is that my parents were in a very significant amount of credit card debt. But I just like, I didn't have the concept of like not doing something or not buying something because I didn't have enough money. Like I just didn't have that concept. And it seems kind of silly to say now, but I mean, that was the thing. So it was really just easy to fall into that, like, oh, I'll just use the credit card, I'll just use the credit card, and it'll all like kind of work out in the end. And of course, that didn't work.
Well, especially too, I think because you mentioned you were making so much money.
Yeah.
So it was easy to say like, yeah, this will work out. I'm making so much, like easily this should fix itself.
Exactly, yeah. I also, in an attempt to like make my credit score better, I opened up a lot of credit cards to up my total credit line, because one of the factors that goes into your credit score, again, not an expert, but is the percentage of your credit usage. And so if you have one credit card and it's maxed out, then your credit usage is going to be really, really high. Where if you have like multiple lines of credit and you're only using a little bit, the credit card companies, they like that. They like to see that. And so I also like opened up multiple credit cards to up my total credit availability and keep my usage low. But then I just started like maxing out multiple cards instead of actually keeping that credit usage low. So that, in hindsight, was probably not the best idea, but it was what I did at the time. So I think that's just another way, is it's just like, oh, well, like when you have the credit availability, it's just very easy to use it and think that it's all going to work out and be fine. And then all of a sudden you're looking at a lot of debt. It adds up quick. And the interest is yeah, interest is a little bit of an evil thing.
It's one of the things we've spoken about, where one of the biggest mindset changes for me with my budgeting and money is not counting the money before I have it. Which again seems obvious, but there was plenty of times where I would think, oh, well, I've worked a lot this week, or I've done overtime, so I should have this money coming, so I'll just put it on the credit card because the money's on its way, so I'll be fine. But then some unexpected expense comes up, or it's less money than I thought it was going to be, or whatever, and now suddenly I've made a big purchase and did not make enough money to pay it off. And so trying to switch that to just waiting for, okay, the money should be coming, I'll keep an eye on this item, but I'm going to wait till the money's actually there before buying it. And yeah, it just, again, seems super obvious, but that's helped me a significant amount of basically anytime I feel like buying something and I'm like, oh, the money's coming, just reminding myself, no, let's wait a moment for the money to actually come.
Mm-hmm. Yep. For me too, like, I think something that I was doing too back when I was getting myself into credit card debt is almost like spending the money twice.
Yeah.
So, thinking like, oh, I've got X amount of dollars in my bank account, I'm going to just put this on a credit card. And then, because like it's not quite enough, and so, but I'll just use it, and then, it'll be fine because most of the money's there. But then still like using that money for other things because it was still in my debit account and available. So that's definitely something that I've had to work on and get better at, is like, yeah, just not spending the money twice,
I know for myself, with my high yield savings account, I literally have it in a separate bank, so I don't see the money. So I'm not tempted to spend it. And that's worked well for me personally, just because, I can check the money if I need to, but otherwise I can just largely leave it there. And because it's in a separate bank too, even if I wanted the money, it takes a while to get it because I have to do a bank transfer. So it adds enough friction where I'm less tempted to actually use the money. And yeah, I know for me, I got very fortunate where my parents were able to bail me out of the credit card debt. I basically reached out to them because At the time, I was working two jobs to try to pay down my own debt, and my second job stopped existing. The company went under, and it quickly became a point where I was not going to be able to make all my bills because the second income just got taken out from me. So I had reached out to both my parents to see if they were willing to help at all, and if not, I would figure it out. But I showed them basically, here's my financial situation. You can see all the money I've been spending. You can see all the money I've been making. You can see that I'm not in this debt because I'm not going on vacations to, Florida or something. This is all just living expenses being paid. And here's my plan to try to fix the situation. I, at the time, was trying to get into tech, which paid more than my job at the time. And I was able to do that. I was going to start really focusing on eating at home more. I was going to, in the meantime, while I was trying to get into tech, pick up a different second job or potentially third job. So I had a plan on how to get out of this situation and prevent the situation from happening again. But in the meantime, I was going to need help or figure out something. And I was very fortunate that my parents were able to bail me out of my credit card debt. And then, yeah, I got my second and third job and worked that for a while, basically until my primary job paid me enough to not have to work multiple jobs. And I know Michelle also chipped in a bit, so I didn't have to work a second job for a little bit, which was very nice. And so that's how now I've gotten out of credit card debt, and I've stayed out of it because, again, I worked multiple jobs, or now my main job pays well enough, as well as also cutting back on spending where I can. Again, really waiting for the money to hit, making sure I'm not double spending it, like Michelle mentioned.
I think that segues really well into now how we do our actual budgeting, because I think one of the really great things that you were able to do was like really show your parents the objective data of where your money was going
Yeah.
because of how diligently you keep track of your spending.
Yeah.
So I think that segues in nicely.
So as I just mentioned, one of the things I mentioned was budgeting, right? And this came in really helpful for me. I mean, budgeting in general is really helpful, but in my case, it came really helpful when I reached out to my parents because I could show them the data on this is where my money's going. There's no guessing here. I got the sense from my parents before this that they really thought I was in financial trouble because I spent all my money on video games. And if I just spent less on video games, I'd have no financial troubles. And yeah, on the data I sent them, I think over the course of a year, I spent like $1,000 or $2,000 on video games, which is still, $1,000 or $2,000. But when the total debt is 14 grand, that's obviously not the reason I'm in credit card debt. And so having the data to actually show them was really useful. And also, budgeting, I think, is something that's very, very important to do and a real easy way to start wrapping your head around finances. For me, I got a nudge from a friend and actually just wrote about it on my website. I can link that in the description. But I got a nudge from a friend to start tracking my spending. And so that was just, and still is, a big Excel sheet where I put the date, what place, what the store name is, how much I spent, what account I used to pay for the thing, and what the category is for the thing. And that's how I keep track of my spending. And then every month or year, I can take a look at how much I've spent in whatever category. I can make a pivot table and use that to make charts to see, oh, I've spent this much in food. For the longest time, that was all my budgeting was. Ideally, budgeting should be how much you're making compared to how much you're spending. But I worked retail for the longest time where my hours changed weekly. So there was no easy way for me to pick an amount that I was making consistently to then budget off of. Once I got my first real, in air quotes, adult job where I had 40 hours a week at a set pay rate, I could then start budgeting. So then I looked at how much I was bringing home after taxes and all that, and compared that to the monthly bills I was paying for. So rent, electricity, uh, any subscription, so like Spotify or Netflix or anything like that. And I listed out what I was already spending and the ideal amount I would spend for things like food, where you don't know how much you're going to spend on it, but you can say, I want to spend only $400 this month on food or whatever. And once you start doing that, well, that's how I realized I was not making enough money to survive, because even with cutting as much as I could from my monthly expenses, there was not enough money left over at the end of the month. And since then, I've again made more money where there is money left over at the end of the month while also saving. And that was really important for me once I got my, again, real and air quote adult jobs, because then that let me predict or see how much I should spend in these areas. With that, and again, this was also from my friend, he made an Excel spreadsheet where you would track how much in each category you were spending while you spent it. So for food, for example, I could budget $500, and through the month I would put whatever I spent in food in that area, and it would tell me, okay, you have $300 left this much to spend on food, or 200 or 100, or you're negative $100 on food this month, or whatever. I've recently stopped using that because I found myself not using it that often. Like, I would put the data in, but I would never check it to see how much I was spending or not. I think at this point I have just a good general vibe on if I'm spending too much in these areas, as well as the fact, as I mentioned earlier, I have specific accounts for things. So I know that if my weekly spending account has enough money in it and I don't need to pull from other accounts, then I'm budgeting fine, because the other accounts are going to have the money they need for whatever. And yeah, it's also one of those things where, like, I know with our budget, like, I can eat out maybe once a week, or we can by myself, and then we can do a date night, ideally once every other week or somewhere in there, and that shouldn't go over budget. And so, yeah, you just, over time, I got kind of a vibe for what I was doing and didn't need the reminder as much. I still also track everything I spend in my big Excel sheet, and if I need to check how much I've spent in the month, I can use that data. So I basically just condensed it down because I didn't like copying the same data twice, but I still use the second sheet to budget of, okay, this month I'm going to plan for this much in groceries and this much in car insurance and this much in whatever, so that when I update my direct deposit at work, I know how to update it. Michelle, I know you use a bit of a different system.
So over the years, I've tried multiple different ways of budgeting. I tried your Excel spreadsheet at once. I tried the Intuit version of their like budgeting software where you can load in all your accounts. But the one that I've ended up sticking with and really liking, and used really consistently over the last 2 years, is called YNAB. It's YNAB, stands for You Need a Budget. It is a pretty popular software if it's something that you're interested in learning. There's a lot of like YouTube videos and things from people who are experts in how to use it. But essentially it links with whatever financial institution you use. So like I can log right into my bank, and then all the transactions that happen through the bank load right in, and I can see them, and then I can categorize them. Once money comes in, it's based off the envelope method. And so I'm able to actually like assign my money a job, which I really like and really helps me from spending that money twice, like we talked about. So that's been really helpful for me. It does cost money, which is kind of, I guess, when you're budgeting can be a little counterintuitive, but for me, it is well worth the $14.99 a month for the ease of use and the the power and control that I feel like it gives me. It's this very empowering feeling to know where your money's going, and that you have the money you need for the bills that are coming up and the things that are coming up. And similarly to Stephen, they also will make you graphs and oh gosh, they have a lot of like ways for you to see your data. They also have an app as well. So similarly to the way that Stephen talked about, being able to see like how much money you have left to spend in a certain category, you're able, you could theoretically just look on your app and see like, oh, I have X amount of dollars to spend on dining out this week or whatever. So I don't use the app much at all. I don't find it very user friendly. I do everything on desktop, but it is an option and you do have it. And then also it's nice. So there's an area where you can make notes. So like I'm able to say in my notes, this is due on X day of every month. So that I'm able to make sure that there is enough money in there by that date so that you don't run into the problem like Stephen was talking about where you don't have the money when you need it, etc. I find it really useful. I really like it. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, so I think just to kind of recap this episode, some of the important things for us financially or how we budget or finance is that we keep most of our money separate. We do have some joint accounts that we use to save for joint things, but largely most of our money stays separate. But we do talk with each other when there's big expenses coming up because we still want to make sure that we're doing things together and we're not putting ourselves at risk or in a bad situation. We've also thought about trying to do monthly check-ins with each other about seeing where we are financially just to make sure we're on the same page. And yeah, other than that, I think the biggest piece of advice I could give is just budget. Even if it's just tracking where your money's going at first, that gives you the data to then see, oh, I spent so much money this month on food. Next month I want to spend less on food or whatever it is. For me, it's always food that's over budget. Yeah, do you have any other thoughts or things you wanted to say, Michelle?
Well, I will say that just a really amazing resource out there. She's more specifically geared toward women, but there's a creator on like Instagram and TikTok. Her name is Tori Dunlap. She goes by Financial Feminist. She was a wonderful resource for helping me figure out how to manage finances better. She talks a lot about like financial health, and she has a book. I haven't read it, but I'd like to. I feel like I learned a lot from her. So I think she's just a good resource to check out if you're interested. But yeah, other than that, that's money.
That's money.
That's money. We did it.
Yeah. As usual, there'll be an email in the description if you have any questions or you'd like to hear us talk about anything in particular. But with that, I'm Stephen Tansey.
I'm Michelle Tansey.
And you were talking with the Tanseys.